Okay, so what we're going to need for fashion illustration is going to be a 9" by 12" or larger sketchbook. That's number one. So this, you can see, is 11 by 14 inches. That's going to work too, but at least 9" by 12". We can't do just regular notebook paper size of 8.5 by 11. We need a little bit larger. And the larger you go, like this really large size, 11 by 14, it's just going to give you more space to draw really nice and big and get lots of details in there. So at least 9" by 12" or 11 by 14. I would make sure it's spiral bound. What's nice about that is you can open this page all the way up and you could really access both sides. If it has a different kind of binding down here, it can be hard to really get into the center of your paper and use both sides really well. So I would say spiral bound, and make sure the binding, I would say, is on the left side as opposed to binding up at the top. That's just going to be harder to deal with. So spiral bound, all-purpose, inexpensive sketchbook, just something that says it can handle all sorts of things. Doesn't have to be special, not, you know, specifically for watercolor, specifically for anything, just all-purpose, inexpensive sketchbook. You can do this white bleached paper. Sometimes I also do like a brown recycled kind of craft paper. That works too. Whatever you want to draw on, white paper might be good when you're first starting out. You're also going to need tracing paper. So this is a pack of tracing paper, and tracing paper is really super thin like tissue. You can see through it and easily trace through it. And so get yourself whatever size sketchbook that you have. So if you've got 9 by 12, a 9 by 12 pack of tracing paper is great. If you've got 11 by 14 sketchbook, you might want to get 11 by 14 tracing paper so that you can easily trace the whole page. Just get a whole pack of that. You're also going to need Bristol board. So Bristol board is pretty specific. It's presentation board. It's a little bit heavier. Let me get a piece here. It's like kind of like a cardstock. It's a heavier paper. It has a really great surface that's going to be good for both markers and for paints, which is what we're going to do to put color onto our drawings. Basically, when you try to put marker and paint on this thin sketchbook paper, it's going to absorb it all that liquid really quickly, and you're really going to struggle. So when we do our final illustrations, after we've done all our practice in the sketchbook, it's nice to use a better quality Vellum Bristol board. So that's what this says. It's also sold in packs. This is 11 by 14, it says here. If you're going 9 by 12, you could get that size, but I'd say 11 by 14 would give you lots of space on the page. And it's basically, vellum just means it has a smooth finish, which is really good for lots of different media. It's just going to hold that color really well for your final drawing. So a pack of Bristol board is what you're going to need. The next thing you're going to need is your clear drafting ruler. So this is really specific. It's exactly 2 inches wide, 18 inches long, and you can see it is clear all the way through. Mine is red. It came from Plaza Art in Richmond. I think the art supply store here in Petersburg also has these red ones. They're inexpensive. This is like $3. So it's flexible. You can see all the way through it, and you could really easily see that's 1 inch. This is 1 inch. It's got this grid that you can just easily mark your paper out with. So you'll need this. This is what Joanne sells. It's blue, but it's basically the same. Looks a little bit different with the way it's marked out, but it's still 2 inches. It has these 1 inch squares, and it's 18 inches long. Totally clear. This is like $7 at Joann's. So if you can go to an art supply store or look online, you can get it cheaper, and it's just a clear plastic drafting ruler. So we're going to need that. Some kind of pencil. So you can just use like regular number 2 pencils. Make sure you have a small pencil sharpener so you've got that handy to always have a really nice sharp point. I like to use mechanical pencils because I press really hard with these number 2 pencils, And then when I try to erase, I can't erase it. It's almost like, it looks like I'm drawing in ink when I use a pencil. So if I use a fine point mechanical pencil, it's better for me. I can erase it easier, I can get fine points. Because I press so hard, I often break the lead of mechanical pencils. If that happens to you, it's okay. You can get a 0.09 lead, and so I always have like extra leads and a little thing here. You can get a heavier lead to put in your mechanical pencil, and it's gonna be more durable. It's not going to break as fast as these like little 5s and 7s. So mechanical pencil, the lead, some erasers are going to be your best friend. You're going to mess up. You're practicing. So this is a white eraser. This is like a gum eraser. You can try a variety, but some nice erasers. These are super cheap. They're like 25 cents at an art store. A couple good erasers that you can erase. And then I even have this cool thing, which is like an eraser on a stick. If you see, like I can keep pushing it out, but this gives me fine point eraser action, which is really helpful. So I carry this around all the time. So some kinds of pencils and eraser combo so that you've got options. You're also going to need some Micron pens. Micron pens are these guys. They're really fine tip pens, and they come in a variety of fine tips, and they're actually written on the top. So like this is a 0.05, and let me show you if you can even see, if we can, I can't see if we can focus. Oh, I'd have to do that. There we go. Very fine tip, like so fine, right, that I could do decorations on my nails here. This one is bigger. That was 0.05, so this is like a 0.01. Oh my gosh, look how tiny this is. Like you can't even see it. It's so tiny. These are fine tip markers, similar to Sharpies. It's like a really great permanent marker, but with a really fine tip. I could use like a number 1. It almost looks like more what you'd think of as like a regular fine tip marker. This is a number 2. Oh wait, actually I took this back. This is, where did it go? 0.02, so not a number 2. That's why this is also really, really, really fine. So get yourself a couple of fine tip markers of some sort. Sharpie makes a version of this. It's totally fine. You just need fine tips. I say this 0.05 is a really good one. I kind of use a 0.05 and maybe a 0.01 for really fine work, and then maybe just like a regular 1 as my sort of go-tos. But a couple of options of really fine point markers are going to be really good. Some inexpensive paper scissors, you probably already have these around for something, is going to be helpful. And you're going to need a set of paints. So this is a set of gouache. Gouache is similar to watercolor. Watercolor will also work. It's just that gouache is a little heavier and more opaque. If you've ever painted with watercolor, it's great because you just add water and you could have paint endlessly. It actually doesn't dry out. Like if you leave it on your paint palette, and we'll talk about that in a second, but like this is my paint palette, it looks like, oh no, I've ruined it. I've covered it with paint. Well, I haven't. I can save these colors indefinitely. I even have like this little one that I have in a bag so I don't lose the colors. But if I add water to these seemingly dried out bits of color, it's going to reconstitute my paint. So that's why watercolor is so nice. It washes up really easily, but I can always save my paint, save my colors, and I just add a little water and it comes right back to life. Watercolor though, it's really light, it's really thin. You can usually see through it. It's translucent. So gouache works like watercolor. See, it looks like this, gouache. It works like watercolor, but it's more opaque, so it's heavier, so it's just got a lot more depth to it. It's a good fashion illustration paint. And so it comes here in tubes. Often you'll see watercolor sets that are like the hard bricks of watercolor, and you have to add a lot of water to get them going. If you can get something in a tube, it's going to be a lot better because you can just squeeze it out. It's just easier to access. And then these little baby tubes. So this is the really expensive set. that I bought for like $80 years ago, but I've literally had it for, 20 years. It's still good. It's still lasted. But you can also buy, like I got this set recently at an art supply store for $10. It was $9.99. And this is also a set of gouache in tubes, tons of different colors. Even if you really just had the basic colors, we can obviously mix them ourselves and we could make any colors we want, but it's got lots of starting options, which is really nice. And these work pretty well, and we're again $10, and it's going to last me probably just as long as that $80 set. So an inexpensive or expensive if you want to splurge set of watercolor or gouache paints in tubes. And so if you're going to be using paints, you're going to need a paint palette, as I discussed. And so this is a plastic palette. I really like this one because you could put your paints on the outsides here and mix your colors, and then I put water in this central reservoir. So I have like water and paint really easily accessible. You could also do a metal one like I've got here, really inexpensive. And this is a palette knife, and so this is used to mix your colors. It's just like a plastic, sometimes metal, also inexpensive. This way you can mix your colors without having to use your brush to do that, so you don't mess up your brushes. So that could be something really helpful. You'll also need some paint brushes, and so variety is nice. You can get like a variety pack. They don't have to be expensive. I never use expensive brushes. I use pretty cheap ones, and I even end up treating them pretty bad, but I always have a variety. So I like a lot of really fine tips. I even got like this one here that's so fine. You keep it in a little sleeve to make sure it doesn't get messed up. So I like a lot of really fine tips for detail, and then I like to have a few that are a little bit bigger so I can get washes of color, some different shapes, some that are really short, just a variety so that you can have different marks that you're making. So some paint brushes, and you're going to need some Prismacolor markers. So after we're done with painting, we're also going to try markers. And so Prismacolor markers, it's a brand of marker. They look like this. This is a set of them. So it's got, I think this is like a 24 pack. I can count it. I think so. So this is a set. You could also buy them individually, but Prismacolor markers are not going to be like your standard marker that a kid would use. These are high quality graphic design markers. These are going to be a lot more opaque. They're going to look amazing. This is what pros are using. So you can't cheap out. It has to be this brand. There are a couple other brands that I would accept, but honestly, these are going to be just the same price as other brands, so there's really no reason. You're going to definitely get these from an art supplier, so you can go to an art store or you can go online and get them. But so Prismacolor has one end that's like a really fine tip and one that's fat, so you can do like a big fat thick heavy wash of color with your larger tip, but then you can do a really fine tip like this on the end. They're going to have numbers on the side. So this says cool gray 20%, PM 109. Grays are going to be what you need. When I was first using markers, I didn't buy a set. I actually just bought individuals. I bought like just a handful of colors, maybe about 12, but I definitely bought a few different grays. And the gray that I suggest is a number 112 cool gray. This is PM 112 cool gray 50%. It looks dark here, but when it goes on the paper, here, I'll see if I can show you. It goes on here like a really nice light gray. This is going to be a great shading marker. So that is the one I suggest. Even if it doesn't come in your set, you might want to buy just individually. And these are a few dollars when you buy them individually, might be like $2 or $3 per marker. But if you get a set, you might get a better deal. But buy the number 112 cool gray, and also a colorless blender. So it'll look just like this. I actually have one by another brand called Copic, but it would be clear. So it's almost like using a little bit of solvent, so it helps blend your colors. So if I was to use like a red and then a yellow next to each other, I could use the clear blender and rub the two together, and I might get a little orange that comes in the middle. So we'll talk about this when we do marker demo, but that would be another marker individually for a couple of dollars that you might want to buy. Otherwise, like I said, you can get a set or you can buy them individually. So aside from paints and markers and lots of drawing supplies, I'm going to want you to get the required textbook, which is called Fashion Sketchbook. And then also, this is just one I suggest, so I'm showing it, called 9 Heads. This is the book that I used when I was an undergrad. I really like it. You can find them really inexpensive, like older copies now, so it might be just a good one to pick up. And it's really just got lots of good references to choose from so that you can draw all sorts of different things. And then what I also like about this book and having it physically is you can see like how big it is. This is a really big book. Let's see, I'll use my ruler and I'll tell you. It's 13 inches by 9 inches. So basically this is the size of your 11 by 14 or 9 by 12 sketchbook. So I would often come into this book and I would just trace my imagery that I wanted to start drawing. I would trace it directly from the book and then transfer it to my paper so that I can draw on top of it and get myself in the practice mindset. So I really like to have physical fashion illustration books on hand rather than just looking at an ebook online or watching tutorials online, so that I can trace directly from them. I can, get a piece of fabric, get a collar, and I could trace that directly and put it right onto my paper. It just makes such a good reference. So I suggest this book, and then also the other one that I'm requiring, you could get that and even maybe do an ebook version of it, because it also has so many good references and tutorials. So that should cover all the supplies that you need for this class.